to continue because we have the bells ringing.
Yes,
wonderful. We'll start very quick welcome to meeting 111, the House of Commons Standing Committee, Government Operations and Estimates, pursuant to Standing Order 1083C. The committee is meeting. Commence consideration subject of the sub-Cs 2023-24. Votes 1C, 5C under PSPC. Vote 1C under PCO. Vote 1C under Shared Services. And 1C, 15C, 20C, 30C under TBS. Keep your microphones or earphones away from microphones, causes feedback, potential injury. We are very short of time. We're going to turn things over immediately for an opening statement from the minister. I think we'll probably just have one opening round of about 4 minutes before we lose the minister. Minister Duclos, welcome back. Please go ahead, sir.
So just to be certain, when do we expect the vote to start?
We've got about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
We'll have your opening statement, probably 4 minutes for each opening. So go ahead, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. As Minister of Public Services and Procurement Canada and Shared Services Canada, I am pleased to discuss our requests in the 2023-2024 Supplementary Estimate C, and thank you for inviting me. We are requesting an increase to our expenditures, and allow me to put some of these requests in context. First, the modernization of procurement requires a simplification of our processes and to make it more efficient. The second priority is to provide quality services for Canadians, as well as to resolve pay issues for public servants and move forward with the next generation human resources and pay system. The third priority involves supporting our government's response to the housing crisis. To do so, we are accelerating the conversion of surplus federal properties into affordable and accessible housing. This year alone, through agreements with developers, the Canada Lands Company will enable the construction of more than 2,800 housing units, and over the next 5 years, there will be 26,000 new homes on its properties, at least 20% of which will be affordable housing units. And of course, my fourth priority is to continue working in close collaboration with key partners to implement the Canadian Dental Care Plan. To date, over 1.5 million seniors have become eligible for the plan, and oral health care providers have started signing up last week. I'd also like to update you on the work done by PSPC officials to answer questions about Canadian government procurement processes. First, I'm very proud and grateful for all the hard work done by public servants to protect Canadians' health during the pandemic, whether it be by ensuring the supply of vaccines, rapid tests, or personal protective equipment. The work of these public servants at Canadians helped save lives and keep our economy running. I wish to reassure this committee that the findings of improper behavior, including fraud, are unacceptable.
PSPC suspended all delegated authorities for professional services-based task authorizations in order to implement additional controls to strengthen IT procurement and management of contracts. That same month, PSPC suspended all GC Strategies contracts with the Canada Border Services Agency. Since that time, I can confirm that every active contract with that company has been terminated across government, and the company is ineligible for any new contracts. Following further investigations, both PSPC and Shared Services Canada have also recently suspended Dalian and the Dalian Coradix joint venture for current and future contracts. We also need to have more tools that can protect our supply chains from bad actors and respond to evolving threats. And that is why earlier today, I announced the establishment of the Office of Supplier Integrity and Compliance. That new office will enable PSPC to better respond to misconduct and wrongdoing and further safeguard the integrity of federal procurements. I also provided an update on investigations by PSPC that had uncovered several fraudulent schemes undertaken by subcontractors working on federal professional services contracts between 2018 and 2022. The department has revoked or suspended the security statuses of these subcontractors and is taking steps to recover illegitimate amounts billed to the government. These cases have also been referred to the RCMP. In closing, Mr. Chair, all of this work is part of the reinforced efforts of PSPC and all other departments to keep strengthening federal procurement and hold bad actors accountable for wrongdoing. Sur ce, il me fera plaisir de répondre.
I'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
We've got about 13 minutes, so we'll start with 5 minutes. 5 minutes, we'll suspend for the vote, and then come back with 5 minute for the opening. Go ahead, Mrs. Block, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses, Minister, for joining us today. Earlier today, Bill Curry reported that an internal review of federal contracting uncovered at least $5 million in fraudulent billing by private contractors. You, of course, confirmed this, and you held a press conference earlier today where you announced that 3 information technology subcontractors fraudulently billed on contract work across a number of separate federal departments, agencies, and crown corporations. The total of these illegitimate payments is, as I've said, almost $5 million. Your officials mentioned that 5 to 10 more cases are being looked into. Can you tell me how much money is involved in these additional cases?
Well, thank you for the question, and very pleased to note that you did follow both the story this morning in the newspaper and, equally importantly, the presser that I gave with President of the Treasury Board, Anita Anand. 3 things we announced briefly. First,
Excuse me, Minister. As you noted, I followed along the press conference. What I'd like to know is how much money is involved in these additional cases. Do you know, yes or no? And if you do, how much?
So I'll cut that to 2 pieces then. First, the announcement this morning, the $5 million, which, as you will have understood, is under investigation by RCMP, and all appropriate attempts will be made to recover those dollars. And second, the fact that, as you also mentioned, there are other cases under investigation, and when more will be known, appropriate measures will be taken.
Thank you very much for that. Are these investigations expanding to any of the companies involved in the ArriveCan scam?
These are separate cases. The reason for which we're able to talk about them today is that since 2018, and more importantly, since the pandemic, a large number of procurement contracts are now electronic. We have invested significantly in electronic procurement, so we're able to use data analytics and the considerable data that has been accumulated to proceed to the identification of these cases and eventually to prosecute them in court.
Thank you. What does your department define as fraudulent payments? For example, were subcontractors paid for work that they didn't do?
Well, this is for these cases, which are different from the ones that you have in mind, different from the ArriveCan cases on which you have spent considerable time over the last few weeks. So these are separate cases, and as you would understand, and as would be appropriate, no, we can't talk about them in public, since that would undermine the important RCMP efforts that are currently undergoing.
So you can't identify the companies, but can you identify which departments are involved with these contractors and the fraudulent payments?
There are many of them. I think it's a bit more than 30 of them, and all of them are cooperating, as they should be doing, with PSPC to find out what went wrong and how we can prosecute those cases and recover the dollars that were fraudulently provided to them.
Can you tell me, are the public servants that were involved with these contractors and these payments being investigated at all?
the information that I have, and again, we need to be very careful because we wouldn't expect and we wouldn't want politicians to get involved in RCMP investigations. So that information is far from political interference. So we are based, we have high-level information that suggests that there is no wrongdoing on the part of public servants at the moment at which we're speaking, but that is obviously under investigation as well.
What about the public service? Any individuals who in the bureaucracy, in the departments that may have been working with these contractors, are they being investigated?
As we just said, everything is obviously under scrutiny, but as we speak now, it's the RCMP is investigating outside subcontractors that have billed fraudulently the federal government.
You said earlier today that there is no evidence that the fraudulent payments were a result of mismanagement. And so I guess I would ask then, are you aware if these subcontractors provided proof of work, or did departments simply pay without seeing that proof?
As we just said.
Sorry, I'm going to have to intervene because we're very short time. That is our time. Perhaps we can get back to it next round or in writing. Mr. Baines, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for taking the time to join us today, and of course, of all of our department officials. The construction industry. My question is regarding the construction industry and how it plays an essential role in Canada's economy, employing nearly 1.5 million people. And of course, as you know, the region I'm from, Richmond, British Columbia, and the Greater Vancouver region is a large segment of this construction industry. So, in December of last year, the PSPC introduced the Federal Prompt Payment for Construction Work Act. Can you briefly explain the importance of prompt payment for the industry and how this legislation will achieve? I hear from a lot of construction industry associations on this matter, and it's very important to them.
Well, thank you, Parm, for bringing to this committee the important voices of your constituents. And it's obviously the case that many families, many middle-class families in your riding will benefit and will have benefited from the important activities of the construction industry. We need them and their workers to do all the right things that they are currently doing in BC and in your riding. Now, as you pointed out, there's great news on that. The Prompt Payment for Construction Work Act that is now in place is making sure that with that new legislation, it takes less than 28 calendar days for construction companies to be paid upon sending their invoice. This is remarkable because it's above the existing norm. That was a 30-day rule, which was already achieved in 90% of the cases. But now it's going to be all cases, 28 days and less. And that also incites and even demands that subcontractors are paid rapidly following the payments to contractors. So subcontractors need to be paid no more than 7 days after they have invoiced the contractors, and the subcontractors get the same treatment with the subcontractors. So it's all part of a series of positive actions that now support the construction industry. They may get paid faster for the important work that they do. That reduces all sorts of uncertainty costs. It makes them able to pay their workers more rapidly. So it makes things a lot easier for them. And we know that reducing the cost of constructing homes in particular in your riding is absolutely essential to address the housing crisis in Canada.
Thank you for that. And just to follow up to that, what impact will this have on federal infrastructure projects?
Well, this is another great point that you're making, because obviously, as we just said, constructing new homes in your riding is essential for middle-class families and many other families. It's also very important for the federal government to partner appropriately with the construction industry across Canada. We need their support to maintain, renovate, and construct buildings for the federal government. So again, they will be a lot more willing and a lot more able to work with the federal government if they know that they will be paid on time. And the subcontractors to those contractors will also be more willing to work with contractors if they know, again, that they will be paid on time by their contractors.
Okay, I'll go to a shorter question, maybe, hopefully if you can answer. Can you speak about the controls in place to ensure there's no political interference in the selection of companies that are bidding for contracts?
Well, this is so good, so important, and so good to point to. Now, there shouldn't be, and we don't want it to be the case, that there is political interference in the choice of which company will be awarded a contract. And that's why accountability requires ministers and their officers to detach themselves from political interference in the contractual arrangements, including the choice of the contractors at the federal government's level. We expect that to be the case, and that's what is also the case at PSPC and elsewhere in the federal government.
Thank you.
Great. Colleagues, we've got about 3 minutes left, so I will suspend. We will be back right after the vote. Customary, it's 5 minutes when the vote is announced, so we will be starting right on that. Minister, are you staying in the room voting virtually? Sir?
Chair, can we ask for UC to vote from here, and then once everybody has voted, continue the questioning?
If that works. Oh, I can't for Larry.
No, that's there.
Yeah, sorry, one of the apps not working, so we will suspend. Okay. Well, no, 3 minutes and it starts, and it's 10 minutes. Okay, if that's fine with everyone, we will, once everyone has voted, we will start up again because we only have the minister to 5:30. If that works for everyone, perfect. We'll do so. appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as we work around this. We are now with Mrs. Vignola, please, for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I welcome Minister Duclos and your officials. Thank you for coming today. Mr. Duclos, the Department of Public Services and Procurement is asking for $800 million for cybersecurity for defense contractors. And this is a horizontal item in the 2023 budget. So it made me wonder, don't we already have cybersecurity? Why wasn't that planned earlier? Does it need to be improved? Is there any kind of threat or danger? Why is it that all of a sudden we need more for this, and specifically in the area of defense? Well, thank you very much, and that's a very good question. It's not all of a sudden that we need that amount. It's an additional amount. Now, obviously, there are already significant investments in cybersecurity and significant measures, including at national defense. But given what's happening around the globe, and given the kind of information that's out there and the threats that exist in several countries, I don't think I need to go into any detail. Everyone knows what I'm referring to. But we need to invest more in cybersecurity and national defense. So these are additional investments. So if it's for operations, is that to include human resources? Well, I don't know by heart what the breakdown is, but perhaps someone can expand on what 1C represents. This is mainly for human resources, yes. I also see for shared services that there will be a transfer of operational expenditures of $810 million for payments and revenue. And I also see there will be a capital transfer for $689,000. Now, when we're talking about payments and revenue, well, it has made the headlines occasionally because there was a situation where there were very few tests being done and there was a very long trial, rather a very short trial period. Can you please assure me that for this project, for the revenue and payments project, that we won't end up with another Phoenix problem where there wasn't a long enough trial, and despite that, it was implemented? So can you please assure me that this application will not harm trade in general and will not harm in tax collections at our borders? Well, that is the goal. We want to do better in a context of the automation of, or rather, payments becoming automatic. We need to make sure that there's rigorous oversight of transfers and payments. And if you would like, we can explain to you exactly how that will take place. But what we want to do is maintain the way that we are working, however, when there are small margins and when we have to make adjustments. Perhaps someone could expand on this? I believe this is for shared services. I'm sorry, I only have 30 seconds left, so I just want to make sure, because you see, this is going to be deployed, this project is going to be deployed in May, and what we're hearing is that despite the amounts that have been put there, and despite this very short trial period and rather inconclusive testing, that this will still be deployed regardless. And I don't want us to end up with a Phoenix 2.0. So can you please assure us that this won't just open up fraud at the borders? Well, it's very important to be able to answer, because in terms of the transfers and readjustments, Mr. Jones would be able to answer you. Well, it's very important to note that the role of Shared Services Canada is to provide network services and connections to the cloud for the Border Services Agency. However, it's not our responsibility to create the application. We've already put into place all the services that are required.
Some response in writing to the committee. Mr. Bachrach, please go ahead for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, Canadians have been rightly shocked and horrified as the details of the botched ArriveCan procurement have been made public. And one aspect that I think seems particularly egregious to people is the charging of commissions by contractors that do very little, if any, work. And I thought this was illustrated best by some communication that came out through the investigation by Bottler, IT company from Montreal. And they describe a phone call with the principal of GC Strategies where he talks about CBSA essentially rolling out this particular IT product to the rest of the government's departments, and that a 15% commission would be charged by his company, something that he laughed at and said the higher pricing would, quote, suck for Canada. Do you agree that charging those kinds of commissions sucks for Canada?
So let me answer that great question in 3 different ways. The first piece,
Because I have 5 minutes, so really tight.
the first piece is that in normal circumstances, you would want those services to be provided by the public service. There are hundreds of thousands of public servants who work very hard and invest their talents and their energy every day to make a difference for Canada, and you would want that expertise and those efforts of the public service to be used. The second thing is that if that's not the case, it either is because there is no ability to do that, and in a complex world, which is becoming complex every day, there are instances in which it's not possible for the public service to answer all of those needs, or it might be that it's too urgent to do so. It would take too little time to do that, as was the case in COVID-19. Now, the third piece, I would say, is that when that is needed, when staff augmentation or contracting is needed for Canadian safety and health to be protected, as was the case in COVID-19, that has to be done following rules. These rules were very clear during COVID-19. Unfortunately, they were not followed by all public servants.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Minister, but there's no rule against charging a commission and doing absolutely no work for that commission. If you're gonna get a government contract, you're a company, you get a government contract, you subcontract that work to someone else and charge 15%. The Canadian public gets very little value for that 15%. Tell me if there's a rule in the government of Canada that prevents that from happening.
Two important points that you mentioned. First, the process. Second, the value. The process has to be open, fair, and transparent, and that's part of this team's job to make sure that this is the case in all contracts, including in emergency contracts, as was the case during COVID-19. The second piece is value for money. Now, value for money is to be assessed by what we call client departments. As in this case, it was CBSA. CBSA had to decide whether it thought it was value for money to invest in that particular contract in the context of the COVID-19 emergency. They thought that the emergency, the speed, the complexity of the work that they faced deserved a contract of that sort. Now, there were rules that had to be followed. They knew these rules. The rules were clearly stated. Unfortunately, some of them, yes, a small number of them, but some of them didn't follow those rules, and you know the outcomes.
I didn't hear an answer to the question.
Yeah.
The question was very simple. Is there a rule? Does the Government of Canada have a rule against charging commissions and not doing any work for the commissions? Like, we're talking about the evidence before the committees of Parliament has shown that it can be 15, 30%, and there can be several layers. So you can get to a point where the Government of Canada is contracting something out and only half of the actual monetary value is going towards doing actual work. The Canadian public should be horrified that this is happening. The governor, or the Auditor General rather, very clearly in her report said that your government overpaid for the ArriveCan app. I'm not sensing any sort of like contrition or embarrassment or sense that this is wrong. I asked you if you agreed that it sucks for Canada, and you didn't answer. Does it suck for Canada that we're wasting money on these apps and contracts for companies that do little or no work? I think it does.
Well, the best answer comes indeed from the Auditor General, who said very clearly that there wasn't enough value for money in the work that was done by GC Strategy. She said that many weeks ago, and she's correct. She pointed to the fact that had that job been done within the federal public service, it would have cost about 50% less. Now, whether that would have been possible is something different,
that is
but
our time.
she did indeed point
Minister,
to a lack of value for money.
So I have to cut you off. We're going to go to the next round. We're doing 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 2, and then 4 minutes in order to get the minister out by 5:30. Go ahead, Mrs. Block.
Thank you. And just a heads up, Chair, I'm going to take the first couple of minutes and then pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Jennis. Bill Curry reported that officials said the 3 subcontractors are not connected to the ArriveCAN app for international travelers, that these are different than GC Strategies. Can you please confirm that for me?
Can you please expand on what you would like me to answer on?
Can you confirm that the 3 subcontractors are not connected to the ArriveCAN application?
Oh, you mean the 3 subcontractors of which we spoke earlier, so
Yes.
the case of this morning? Yes, the information that we have, and again, it's information that is not complete because no one would like to know in this room that a minister is meddling with RCMP investigation. The information that we have is that this is the case.
Thank you. So we've also learned from Bill Curry and yourself that there are even more cases being looked into. Under your government, $21 billion has been paid to external consultants. How many of them are fraudsters, and how much money have they been paid?
Well, the good news is that you're asking this question today. We had a press conference just a moment ago where we did point to the fact that e-procurement, electronic procurement activities over the last few years have been accelerated. And the good outcome of that is that we're now able to find out about those fraudulent activities, which probably have been going on for decades, but for which we couldn't do anything because there wasn't an ability to collect, gather, and analyze data. The good news, we have data analytics in 2024. We have the ability to share electronic data, and we're able to do a lot better.
And Minister, the good news is that it was Conservatives that introduced a motion here in this committee and in the House to have this investigated, and your caucus voted against it. Thanks.
Obviously, we're all very pleased that all MPs contribute to the work of this committee. This, however, comes from a 2018 budget investment.
Minister, thanks. It's my time now. I'd like to ask you a very specific question. When were you first briefed on the issues and challenges with ArriveCAN?
I was briefed on, obviously I was aware of that for a number of years. That's the first thing. The second thing is I was briefed very quickly after my coming into office.
Do you have a date for us?
Probably sometimes end of August, early September.
Thank you. And did you provide any direction at that time?
No, didn't provide any direction. I did obviously ask the officials to follow the work that was forthcoming, the work that was going to be produced by the Auditor General and the Procurement Ombud. We knew that we needed to wait for their report before we could take action.
You didn't direct any changes to be made at that time. What's frustrating to me, Minister, I think to many Canadians, is that even today you continue to use kind of the impersonal, passive voice to describe events that happen at the department that you're supposed to be running. And I quipped in an earlier meeting that maybe your role could be replaced with that of a potted plant. But I would seriously like to understand.
Mr. Chair, point of order. That is again a certain level of decorum. I think we expect here.
I completely stand by that comment. It's not unparliamentary. You objected to it last time and were overruled, Mr. Kuzmarchuk.
Mr. Jenowitz. So
thank you. And sincerely, Minister, I would like to understand if you didn't feel it was appropriate for you or you weren't willing to take action when you were briefed on this metastasizing procurement scandal, what role do you see yourself having in procurement as the minister responsible for procurement?
Well, it's a great job, you know.
It sounds like it's a great job.
We as a government, and you're part of the exercise when you use your judgment and your critical input. Now, this is supportive of thousands and hundreds of thousands of middle-class jobs across Canada.
Minister? What is it you do
The government of
here?
Canada is the biggest procurer of goods and services in the
No,
country.
but you personally,
it
as
helps
minister,
build
what do you
communities,
do?
Sorry, gentlemen, I
it
have
helps
to interrupt.
provide
That
good
is our
jobs
time.
for hundreds of thousands
of
of
you,
Canadians.
that
This
is
is an
our
important job.
You're eating to
But
Mr.
what do you
Kamirchak's
do?
time. Mr. Genwis, please, our time is up. Mr. Duclos, our time is up. It's Mr. Kuzmirchuk's time now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to allow you, Minister, to respond to that question. Can you please tell us a little bit about just the number of contracts that PSPC handles on a given year about?
Yeah, well, it's about it's a number of contracts, about 400,000 contracts or amended contracts every year. So it's a big exercise. But more importantly, it's something extremely important for Canadians, for communities, when it comes to supporting the standards of living of middle class families, creating opportunities for everyone to succeed, cleaner environments, safer environments, goods and services, Service Canada working with currently on dental, the dental insurance plan, which is helping already about 1.5 million seniors having access very soon to dental care that they need to be living healthily. So that's this particular example, which we obviously work on with Health Canada and Service Canada, is a feature of the type of good that the government of Canada can do for Canadians, and it requires all sorts of departments to do that, including PSPC.
I'm glad you raised the issue of the Canada Dental Care Benefit. Last time that you were here in front of committee, you were talking about the anticipated rollout. So I'd love to provide, I like to call you the Minister of Smiles because of the fact that you're helping to deliver the Canada Dental Care Benefit to, again, millions of Canadians that otherwise would not have access to dental care. Would not have access if again, the Conservatives were in government, because we all know they voted against the Canadian Dental Care Benefit. But can you just talk a little bit about the dental care benefit and just update us in terms of where we're at this point?
Well, three different things. First, nowadays, it's about a third of Canadians, many of them with middle or lower incomes, that don't go and see a dentist or a hygienist or a denturist because they don't have a private insurance and their income is modest. So they need to pay for rent, for food, for transportation. So they don't go and see a dentist, and they know that it's not good for them. No, they have pain in their mouth. No, they know that the infections that are developed can impact their cardiovascular health, their gastrointestinal health. It can lead to a greater risk of diabetes. So they don't go and see a dentist, and they know it's not ideal. The second thing is that because of this new Canadian dental care plan, many of them, middle income and lower income Canadians in particular, will now have access, sometimes for the first time in their life, to an insurance, a dental care insurance, and will be able to get treatments like a cleaning, an exam, x-rays. If they need a filling, they'll have one. They can replace their dentures, especially if it's been years since they've been unable to replace their dentures. So all of that is good for their own health. It's also good for their ability to participate in life, to feel good, to work, and to prosper. And finally, it's good for our healthcare service and system as well, because when you prevent these people from having to go to the emergency department, to a surgery room under general anesthesia, just because they were not able to have preventative dental care in the first place, then that's bad, because our healthcare system is already overburdened. Healthcare workers are stressed. We don't want that to happen. And the best way for that not to happen is to put into place the new Canadian dental care plan.
Can you tell us, Minister, how many seniors have already been part of the enrolled in the process or in the program? And by the end of this year, how many Canadians will be enrolled in the Canadian Dental Care Plan?
You're going to have to get back to us in writing unless you wish to stay past 5:30. So perhaps with Mr. Sousa's round. Colleagues, please. Mrs. Vignola, 2 minutes, please. And I have to cut everyone off in order to get our times. And colleagues, please show some respect for Mrs. Vignola. It is her time. Go ahead, Mrs. Vignola.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Quite quickly, Mr. Duclos. I'd like to speak about shared services. Are they aware of who is responsible for the development and implementation of the payments and revenue program at CSBA? So we don't want a Phoenix 2.0. We also don't want an ArriveCan 2.0. Well, shared services has two responsibilities. The first is to provide core services, essential services for digital infrastructure. And the same applies for many other services that departments need to have. So shared services is there to provide platforms and basic services. Second, shared services beyond that can also offer their technological expertise, which is sometimes necessary. So it's up to the department to determine whether or not that's necessary. And does PSPC monitor or oversee the creation and implementation of any testing of this program, of the revenue management program? Or are we going to end up finding out that things weren't done properly? Is that what's about to happen? Well, there are two aspects to this. There's the contract and there's the work. So PSPC obviously has a responsibility when it comes to contracts. They have to make sure all procedures have been followed, that they've been validated, and that the work that is being done by other departments is sort of being coordinated. Then there's the operational side. And then that happens within the departments because PSPC can't necessarily be involved in all the operations of each department. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, in 1994, the then Liberal government placed a moratorium on the closure of rural post offices. And the minister at the time said, as long as this government is in power, no rural post office will be closed. Is that moratorium still in place?
It is.
Okay. So the Canadian Postmasters and Postal Assistants Union, they've shared with me that since the moratorium was put in place, we've lost 380 post offices across the country, many of them rural post offices. How is it possible that there's a moratorium on the closure of post offices, and yet we've lost 380 post offices?
So a couple of things. First, as we've just said, the moratorium is still in place. Second, Canada Post is an independent Crown corporation, so it's at arm's length of political interference. It would be inappropriate if the minister...
Specific to the mandate that the government set. So this doesn't have to do with Canada Post. This has to do with whether Canada Post is following the mandate that the government has set for them.
Third is the responsibility of Canada Post to follow that mandate. Fourth, we do know and we do hear from Canada Post that there are some circumstances. It could be the death of a particular worker, it could be a disease, it could be a fire, it could be other things that make circumstances difficult. And through engagement with the community, there are avenues, solutions that are being put into place to make sure that post is delivered despite the challenges that the community is experiencing. So through that, although as you said, it's a moratorium, it has to be applied in a manner which is best supportive of the needs of the particular community.
So here's what's actually happening in my experience is that there are Canada Post post offices with unionized Canada Post staff, and when say there's a fire or say there's a death or say there's another reason why that model is no longer possible, Canada Post pushes to privatize those locations, to contract out those services. Once those services are contracted out, there is no obligation to consult the community when you go from a privatized post office to a mailbox on the side of the road. And we've seen that trend across the country in violation of the mandate that your government set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brock, please, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister Duclos, the notorious fraudster, two-person, so-called consulting company GC Strategies working out of their basement received close to $20 million of taxpayer monies during the Arrive scam scandal. We know that 635 other consultant companies, middlemen, have engaged directly with the Government of Canada for procurement purposes. Have you done an examination, sir, of that 635 number as to how many are situated like GC Strategies? 2 people, 3 people, 4 people working out of their homes?
Well, two different things here. First, these audits occur all the time. There are auditing teams and officers in many departments, including obviously within PSPC, to check whether there are frauds or inappropriate information not being stored or shared or used. So this is the type of work that is done every day by many departments. Second thing is that, as you saw today, there are instances in which we do find fraud. And if there is fraud, then there is action taken, and there are consequences for those that try to fraud Canadians.
But Minister, there isn't immediate action. This government is notorious for being reactionary as opposed to taking proactive steps to weed out the fraud. Why did it take the Auditor General to release a report, the Procurement Ombudsman to release his report, and so according to your statements, a few tips into the government for you to create yet another level of bureaucracy to do exactly what you've been mandated to do? Your ministry is mandated to weed out the fraud as it's happening. So why did we have to wait upwards to 6 years for this one company who goes back to 2018? Why did it take 6 years to identify these fraudulent billing practices?
Let me come back to that in a moment. The announcement this morning, which show that we have more and more tools to detect and detect fraud and to seek the consequences that come with fraud. Second, you spoke to the Auditor General and the Ombuds report. Those reports came in January. In November, the contracts with GC Strategy were suspended, so several months before.
Complaint. After a complaint was received by the CBSA, not because of any due diligence by you, sir, or any due diligence by any other of your ministerial colleagues, or any due diligence by the CBSA ministry itself. It happened as a result of a complaint. So that's another example of a reactionary move. You talk about processes, but the process is not working, sir. So what confidence should Canadians have with this new level of bureaucracy moving forward to actively weed out the bad actors? This is taxpayer money that you are mandated, sir, to preserve and to safeguard. And there's just been nothing but examples after examples of complete fraudulent misuse. So what assurances can you give Canadians, Minister?
So, evidence / action. Whenever there is evidence, there needs to be action, and you've seen this in the last few months. No, there was evidence is produced, there is immediate action. And in many cases, that action doesn't require waiting for more evidence. Second, you saw the announcement this morning. This is not additional bureaucracy. The Office of Supplier Integrity and Compliance is going to be provided with lots of tools,
Minister,
preventative tools.
I have to cut you off in order to get you out on time, but Mr. Sousa is up next. Maybe you can finish your answer under Mr. Sousa's time.
Thank
But
you,
I am
Mr.
trying to
Chair.
get you out the door on your time. Mr. Sousa, go ahead, please.
Mr. Team, thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate that that a lot of work that you have been doing. I mean, I recognize that through the modernization of pay transactions, the defense procurement that you've been heavily involved with over the course of the year that you've been part of, the national shipbuilding strategy, the Canada Lands for affordable housing and other abetments are great initiatives that you put forward. The national capital assets that are needed to be confronted, and of course, more importantly, the modernization and the renewal of some of the very issues that you've identified. And I get it. I mean, I know former cuts by the former government, major cuts, didn't help in terms of some of the issues that are prevalent today, even when you have card-carrying conservatives double dipping in procurement, as they have been and as was founded yesterday. So we have to take measures to correct those. And Minister, I commend some of what you and your team have been doing in regards to it. And I want you to give you the opportunity now to discuss some of the methods of detection, the investments being made, the modernization around procurement, and the office now of the supplier integrity and compliance measures that are necessary that you have identified, and what it is that we're doing going forward.
Thank you, Charles. Let me start with housing. A few weeks ago, we announced that the Canada Lands Company will be creating almost 3,000 new houses, new homes in the next year, and 26,000 in the next 5 years. And out of these 26,000 new homes in the next 5 years, 20% will be affordable homes. So roughly speaking, it's about 5,200 affordable homes built by CLC, Canada Lands Company, in the next 5 years. That compares to a total of 1,100 affordable homes in the last 25 years built by Canada Lands Company. So you see how effective Canada Lands Company and other organizations within the federal government can be when we give them the power and the tool and the incentives and the mandate to do good things for Canadians. Let me then speak to the announcement this morning again. This is good news. Now, we are in 2024. We have data analytics abilities that we didn't have just a few years ago. When COVID-19 started, there was a very small proportion of contracts that went through electronic procurement. Now we're about 98% of contracts that go through electronic procurement. This is obviously very good for the efficiency and the equity of the procurement process. People have more access to information. It increases competition, gives better outcomes at a lower cost for Canadians. This is also all very, very good. But it's also good because it provides the government with an ability in 2024 to detect fraud that wasn't there just a few years ago again. But those things don't happen by chance. No, you need to invest in those things. And that's why just a few months before the pandemic started in 2018, we decided to invest in electronic procurement, in a type of tool that we're now going to be able to use with the Office of Supplier Integrity and Compliance that we announced this morning. So these things are possible, but they don't happen automatically. You need to invest in them and then to make use of them, as we'll be able to do in the next months and years. So we spoke earlier to the 3 cases that we've already been able to detect and pursue, but then there'll be more. So, and also, not only will there be more, but the signal to possible fraudulent makers, en français on dit I'll try to say it, fraudsters, you say that in English, I think? Those fraudsters that might want to commit fraud in 2024 should be very, very prudent, because we have tools now to detect and monitor their activities that didn't exist just a few months ago.
Thank you very much. That is our time. We're going to suspend briefly to change everything over. Apparently, we're going to have bells in about 6 to 10 minutes on closure on C29. So I'll just seek UC right now. That will continue through like before, and we'll vote virtually as before. Minister.
I'll be subbed in.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Wonderful. We are suspended, Minister. And crew, thanks very much for joining us. We're suspended. back. Welcome back, Minister Anand, for like the 30th time to OGGO under various departments. We'll have bells, but hopefully we'll get through the opening statement. The floor is yours, Minister. Just quickly, everyone, depending on how long we're going to lose for the bells, we may adjust the second round times down to 4, 4, 2, 2, 4, 4 again. Minister, the floor is yours, please. Go ahead.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the lands on which we are gathered are part of the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. I'm joined today with members of my department to give an overview of the supplementary estimates C 2023-2024. Le budget supplémentaire des dépenses C présente.
Supplementary Amount C provides for about $13.2 billion in supplementary estimates. Currently, there is an increase of statutory expenses of $4.3 billion. The government is requesting approval of voted appropriations of $8.9 billion. Furthermore, in the current estimates, there will also be $11.9 million for frozen allotments or allocations. So these are changes that were made in the department throughout the year. The amount for this year also includes the $500 million that was withdrawn from budgets of departments under an initiative that was meant to refocus government spending. Recent reports on government contracts and the actions of certain individuals are very concerning for us. As the Auditor General stated, there are rules whose purpose are to guarantee healthy public monies management within the entire government, and not all of these rules were followed.
We announced a series of actions that the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat will take to strengthen our oversight of departmental practices to support effective and streamlined management across government. These actions include the immediate release of an updated manager's guide when procuring professional services to ensure that managers are receiving a clear statement of work and doing due diligence to maintain the integrity of the procurement, including not committing to any payments before those items have been received. Embedding certain elements of the manager's guide within Treasury Board's mandatory procedures to strengthen the accountability of managers' role in procurement. And releasing a new risk and compliance process which will assess government-wide trends, risks, and individual departmental performance. And I will say that will include a horizontal, comprehensive audit across government departments. Also, reviewing of the directive on conflict of interest to ensure that the requirements are clear and effective, and to ensure that more oversight, if needed, will occur. Improvements to the proactive disclosure of government contracts on the Open Data Portal will also be part of this emphasis. We want to make sure that we have transparency in government contracting, and that will include on the portal itself. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, Canadians expect their government to invest their money judiciously, rigorously, and responsibly. Along with Minister Duclos and his team, we want to ensure that we efficiently manage their departments and that we maintain the trust of Canadians.
Expenditure plans is only part of the equation. Canadians expect us to execute effectively, and maintaining public confidence in democratic institutions must be our priority, especially at this moment in time. We will continue to step up to play that role. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. We'll be able to get everyone 6 minutes in. So we'll start with Mrs. Cusi, please. Go ahead.
Minister, it would be
difficult for me to express a greater level of disappointment than I feel on behalf of Canadians today. First of all, this year, we have a $40 billion deficit. And as you know, I hold you personally responsible, as you are the one who signs the checks, who releases the money from the Government of Canada. Secondly, we received this report from the Parliamentary Budgetary Officer regarding the $500 million. The two greatest line items, Minister, are lapsed funds and departmental reserves. Hardly new savings, hardly a safe place for Canadians, Minister. And then, Minister, we know, of course, today that you released these guidelines, because apparently your guidelines of October 5th, 2023 didn't work, because we also received in the media today the news of $5 million in the first wave, only the first wave of fraudulent billing found in contracting. We know what's been going on with Arrive Scam and GC Strategies. We know what's been going on with Dalian. I want you to tell Canadians today how many federal employees are also collecting contracts with the federal government. Give me that number, please. How many federal employees are also collecting contracts with the federal government? Do you have that number for me today?
There is an RCMP investigation relating to the employees as mentioned by Minister Duclos. And in addition, we have a call out through the Comptroller General's office for a cross-government comprehensive list of items as requested in your question.
We don't know the number. We don't know the number right now of how many federal employees are double dipping, who have these jobs with the federal government and are also collecting funds through contracts with the federal government. Minister, my next question is, can you identify within the $5 million, which was announced today in the media by Bill Curry in the Globe and Mail, how much of that is attributed to Arrive Scam? How much of the $5 million is involved in the Arrive Scam scandal?
Those items, on my understanding, they do not fall under my purview, do not relate to the supplier you mentioned.
For all the money, you must have an idea. You must have an idea.
I responded to the question by saying that they are not related, the items that you mentioned.
I think Canadians would think that they are related because it is money going out of the Treasury Board, of which you are the president. $5 million, we understand, was just the first wave. Can you tell Canadians today how much more can we expect of this? How much in the second wave, third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave? How much more will we see in addition to this $5 million, which has been fraudulent
Actually,
billing?
the Auditor General pointed out that the rules exist to address any situations in the public service of this nature, and generally speaking, they are followed. But in the case of ArriveCan and the CBSA, they were not, and that's exactly what I and Jean-Yves Duclos announced today, that we are taking measures to ensure that the public service adhered to their responsibilities under the Directive on Conflict of Interest, as well as the Manager's Guide to Professional Services, which we are updating to ensure that there is value for money for the Canadian taxpayer every single time.
Yeah. What's also concerning, Minister, is that if you look at these numbers, they actually predate the pandemic. They go back to 2018. So this would actually be major fraud that's been occurring within your government since 2018. Can you confirm that this is even pre-pandemic? This isn't related to what was necessary in critical times, but goes back to pre-pandemic. Can you confirm that, please?
I will not dispute what the Auditor General or the PBO officer is referring to in their respective reports. What I am doing from a Treasury Board perspective is taking a proactive approach to ensure that we have the rules in place so that public servants have the oversight and the accountability necessary.
I would say that is far more reactive. Now, the Department of National Defense say that there are no rules, and I will, of course, remind the Canadian public that this was the station you held prior to being in this position, no rules stopping a federal government employee in having contracts with the government. Now, as the Treasury Board president, can you say that this is the policy of the federal government? Is that the policy of the federal government?
Actually, that is absolutely false. The Section 7.1 of the Directive on Conflict of Interest
Why is it occurring?
Says that there are consequences for non-compliance. Any one employee in the federal government that hasn't complied with the requirements of the Directive on Conflict of Interest can be terminated. So there's a requirement to disclose conflicts, and if they are not disclosed or if the disclosure is inadequate, they can be fired.
Well, as key minister for this portfolio, for overseeing this, have you asked your officials how many employees would possibly be in this position?
Of course, I'm concerned with all federal public servants. We have about 300,000 such public servants, and many of them are unionized. And I work closely with all deputy ministers across departments through my officials to ensure that there's compliance with the rules. That is the role that Treasury Board will continue to play. And where there's not, there should be consequences. And that's what we are doing by updating the Manager's Guide on Professional Services.
I'll close with Dalian. Dalian was involved in procurement, the Treasury Board, and Department of Defense. All three positions which you have held. Were you familiar with Dalian? Were you aware that they were completing this type of contracting, this type of work, double dipping, as being responsible for those three portfolios?
I'm afraid I have to cut you off there. We're at our time, but perhaps you can answer on the next round, which is Ms. Atwin. Please go ahead for 6.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Minister, and thank you to the officials for being with us today as well. And perhaps just as a refresher for our committee, can you just explain what is the role of the Treasury Board? What is your primary objective, and what can you explain specifically also as it pertains to procurement?
So the Treasury Board President is the chair of the Treasury Board, generally speaking, comprised of a handful of ministers that reviews all policy and rules that are being implemented by the federal government and oversees from an accountability standpoint that the federal policies that Cabinet has adopted are implemented. We undertake a risk-based analysis every single time, and we ensure that accountability measures are in place. In addition to that, we make sure that we are greening government. We are ensuring the digital transformation of government. We are also supporting diversity and inclusion in the public service, and I recently announced supports for Black public servants in that respect. And so we have a number of initiatives at Treasury Board, but generally speaking, we are overseeing the prudent expenditure of taxpayer dollars.
And can you explain for the committee what the Refocus Government Spending Initiative is, especially as we are doing the build up to the budget?
Unlike previous governments that have not done a Refocus Government Spending Initiative, we are actually working to repurpose funds that aren't being effectively utilized and making sure that those funds are directed towards government policy. So, for example, we are moving towards ensuring that we are refocusing $15.8 billion over 5 years and $4.8 billion every year thereafter. This is something that has not been done in this government. In fact, it is an objective that many advanced economies undertake. So, for example, in the supplementary estimates before the holidays, I tabled $500 million of savings, $350 million from third-party contracts or professional services, which can be then utilized towards our government's priorities, and reducing the spending on outsourcing, and $150 million on executive travel. So that's an example of the type of work we are doing in refocusing government spending. And as I said, we are on track to meet our objectives. We've achieved 97% of the targets for the first year of the Refocus Government Spending Initiative. And it is a way to ensure that we are using taxpayer dollars efficiently and prudently.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So as you mentioned, the supplementary estimates contained many reductions, but also some substantial increases. What are some of the largest expenditures?
I will mention that those increases go towards some government priorities where there are requirements in statute for the for the use of third-party services. So, for example, in national defense, $590 million for the Canadian multi-mission aircraft, $510 million for the strategic transport capability. Those are absolute essential requirements for the Department of National Defense, and we are continuing to ensure that taxpayer dollars are used effectively towards our strategic and our country's protection. In Indigenous services, an issue I know that you have fought hard on, and I thank you for your advocacy. $800 million for child and family services for the Department of Indigenous Services, $800 million for health services for Jordan's Principle, $260 million for emergency management on reserve, $55 million for elementary and secondary education on reserve. I want to stress that our government's priorities, including reconciliation, including an economy and an environment that respects the sustainability of our future, is top of mind, as well as helping our country's most vulnerable, as we do in the Canada Child Benefit and old age security and $10 a day childcare.
Excellent. Thank you so much. My time is quickly going away here, but so mitigating the negative impacts of climate change is becoming increasingly costly as natural disasters occur more frequently and with increased severity. What is the Treasury Board doing to help Canada reach its carbon emissions reductions target?
Well, as I said, to the question about what does Treasury Board do, we are the overseer of taxpayer dollars before a program that has been approved goes out the door. And the work we are doing on environmental sustainability through the power grid, through the EV battery plants, and through the carbon rebate are important examples of the work that we are doing in this area.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Mrs. Vignola, please.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Anand. Thank you to your officials for coming today. My first question is about conflict of interest, or at least appearances of conflict of interest. And here's my question. Let's suppose that a contractor, for example, is working with Rivecan or is responsible for something to do with AI. Let's suppose that contractor has a brother who works in national defense. Does that brother have to tell their employer that they have a brother who has a contract with national defense? I would say that all employees, when they sign their contract, have to inform their department heads of any jobs that may involve a conflict of interest or give rise to a conflict of interest with their brothers or sisters or parents. So there has to be that disclosure as early as possible before signing these contracts. Thank you. And let's say that after signing these contracts, the said brother, who is an employee of the department, learns that their own brother has contracts with national defense or their department. So if that contract has already been signed, does that brother have to make sure that their employer is aware of this, that there may be an appearance of conflict of interest?
Vous avez raison.
Well, you are correct in saying that there has to be a disclosure from all public servants in any department. And it's absolutely important to have that disclosure each and every time, not only for that one contract. Well, thank you very much. I just ask you to make sure that's being done. Now, I was looking at the supplementary estimate C. 129 organizations are asking for new amounts. When I look at the appropriations or authorities to date versus the real expenditures of 2021 and 22, 107 organizations are asking for 23-24 are asking for a higher additional amount than in 2020 and 2021. Sometimes it's actually double the amount. On the other hand, there are 22 organizations that have a lower budget, but most of those organizations have to do with or involved with and somehow with heritage or culture and research. Now, you asked for $15 billion in cuts across departments. Why is it mainly culture and heritage and research that are being impacted by these reductions in budgets?
C'est pas le cas.
Well, that is not the case. Obviously, all departments have to keep these goals in mind. And I've written letters to all the ministers and all the organizations. I did this last summer. And what I said was that there has to be a refocus on our priorities. So that is a balanced approach. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it all happens this year, but over 5 years.
The amount reduced from each department will be similar.
OK, parce qu'en ce moment,
Well, thank you. But if we look at pages 16 to 19 or to 110 of the supplementary estimate C, in the last column, when you look at the last and the earlier column, you can see that it's culture and heritage that are affected. So I'm just making the comment, and I hope that won't continue. Because, culture and research are so important. Yes, you're absolutely right. And I'll ask Ms. Boudreau to expand on that. We just want to make sure that this is balanced in the future. I would just add some clarification. The numbers that you gave had a significant amount dedicated to COVID. Now there is less support for COVID being provided by Heritage Canada, and that's why you saw those initial reduction. Yes, but all the others had increases. So, if everyone goes down, if some go down, the others should go down, and same with going back up. Thank you very much. I'll ask another question during the second round.
One more minute.
Génial.
I have 1 minute left. Amazing. So you are responsible for applying Bill C-13 on the official languages. However, and I would have many questions about this, but however, the parliamentary secretary is the only one who voted against C-13. Are you comfortable with that? Are you comfortable with the government's decision, and what impact will that have on applying this official languages bill? So thank you very much. My responsibility has to do with services to the public, and I will apply the law, and it is my responsibility to see that that happens.
Welcome to OGGO. The floor is yours for 6 minutes, please, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I want to thank the President of the Treasury Board for being with us today. It's an important discussion, as I think Canadians across our country are having to deal with the double crisis of affordability. They themselves are having a tough time trying to balance their own books, whether it's rent, food, or trying to just make sure that they have enough money to make it through difficult times. They're finding challenges in trying to tighten their belts. Meanwhile, they see here in Ottawa a very different story, one that says companies were able to access our public service, bid on contracts that were continuous for almost since 2008, this kind of trajectory of the public service continuing to lose funding, continuing to lose full-time employment, and continuing to lose resources from our federal government as early as 2008. That trajectory creates a kind of problem that the Auditor General outlined in her report. And so my first question to you, Madam Minister, is have you read the Auditor General's recent report on ArriveCan?
Yes.
And in that report, it suggests that given the urgency, quote, given the urgency created by the pandemic, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat encouraged government organizations to focus on results while demonstrating due diligence and controls on expenditures. To support this direction, the Secretariat invoked exceptions so that certain procurements were not subject to the provisions of the trade agreements and the government contracts regulations, and allowed for the consideration of non-competitive approaches to address urgent needs. This, I think, is evidenced as a really important piece that the Auditor General focuses on in her report in direct relation to the fact that the public service is losing funding, and then the vulnerability to the government in terms of outsourced contracts increases. And so there's a direct relationship between how you fund the public service and how vulnerable the government is to fraudulent private outsourced contracts. It's clear in the CBSA instance, for example, they were unable to secure the IT technology here in Canada or within the public service. So they were forced to actually outsource a really critical and important piece of application of an app to these bidders, these contractors that had layers and layers and layers and layers of subcontracts that we're still discovering the mess of today. This extreme loss of funding, this extreme ineffective use of money was very clear in her report. Do you agree with me that there is a direct relationship between not properly funding our public service and creating vulnerabilities in trying to procure the kind of technology or the kind of skills that are actually needed by a government? Do you see the relationship there?
Well, as you know, much of our public service, vast majority of public servants are unionized, and so we work very closely with the unions in order to ensure that the public service employees have the supports they need. A vast majority are under collective agreement that have been renegotiated, and we will continue to work with the unions to make sure the public servants have what they need going forward.
Well, why didn't you consult the unions then in proposition to your cuts? They were promised. The president of the Public Service Alliance of Canada was promised that the government would meet with them in relation to any cuts that would affect full-time employment. They've told me that they have not been met with or consulted with. They've been told and demanded.
We are not.
When was the last time you met with the president of PSAC?
Actually, just last month.
And did you address the cuts?
We spoke about a number of items, and
did you speak about the cuts,
we are
though?
in touch on a regular basis, including I heard from him today.
Did you address the cuts?
We've addressed a number of items, and I won't be disclosing the contents of our private conversation in this meeting.
So it sounds like you don't want to answer the fact that...
Not at all.
No, it's my time. Please, I haven't even answered my question yet. How could you know what I'm asking?
Go ahead.
I would like you to listen because it's important, Ms. Anand.
Yeah, go ahead.
I really don't feel you're taking this seriously.
I am.
I don't think so.
I am.
Because you're not actually trying to address the issues that are facing our public service. I asked you a clear question. Did you address the cuts with the Public Service Alliance of Canada, something that was publicly promised at the time of a national strike?
I will ask the head of OGGO here to address that question, as she is
Sure.
in touch with the unions on
Any information would be very helpful.
on a daily basis. Or Francis Trudel. Go ahead, Francis.
So thank you for the questions. The engagements with unions is certainly part of the collective bargaining process, but it is an ongoing exchange that we have with our unions partners at multiple governance forums, including what we call the NJC process, where all the...
Have you ever spoken about the impact to our public service by way of these cuts? Canadians know that when you cut the public service, you're going to be cutting services to Canadians. This isn't something that should be secret. This isn't something that... This is public dollar. This isn't personal money here. This is public money to public services that Canadians pay taxes for, and they deserve to know that their taxes are being spent effectively and that the minister responsible for the Treasury Board takes seriously cuts to our services in Canada.
The PBO officer actually confirmed that we are not reducing services to Canadians materially with our refocused government spending initiative. We are saving money that can be redirected towards our government's priorities in things like outsourcing and executive travel. The intention is not to reduce the size of the public service, and the intention is not to cut services to Canadians.
Thank you very much.
So we know...
Sure. Sorry, that is
Thank
our
you, Chair.
time. Colleagues, we are going to suspend. Hopefully, like last time, we can all agree to vote, and as soon as we've all voted, we'll come right back. So we'll give everyone about 30 seconds notice before we restart. We are suspended. will start with Mrs. Kusi for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Minister, I'm going to go back to this, what is essentially a second announcement today, since the first announcement of the managerial guidelines seemed to have proven ineffective in the first 6 months. And frankly, I don't think more guidelines are what it required. Frankly, it is the ensuring that public servants are complying with them. I think that's far more important than creating new levels of bureaucracy, new levels of red tape. Now, to go back to the $5 million first wave that was announced today in the Globe and Mail by Bill Curry, the government has identified 635 IT middlemen that do no work. In fact, as we know, the PBO has launched an entire investigation on this. How much has your government paid to IT middlemen?
So my role, and you referenced the announcement at lunch, the role of the Treasury Board President is to ensure that we have the rules and the policies and the guidelines in place. And the Auditor General stated that our rules were sufficient, and I'm taking this opportunity to even enhance them. We know that there's an RCMP investigation relating to CBSA, and we will look to follow those recommendations, but I'm taking this proactive measure of updating the guidelines in advance. Regarding your question, that information has already been provided to the committee, and I look forward to
How much is it? What's the number,
continuing
Minister?
to ensure that we provide whatever information in addition you need. I will ask Annie to provide any further information relating to that. In terms of the one supplier, however, I can confirm 103 contracts with GC Strategies from 2011 to 2024.
We have, of course, GC Strategies and Dalian, which, of course, I'm sure, given your previous role as Minister of Defense and now President of the Treasury Board, and prior to that, procurement, I hope you were aware of. You didn't verify that you were in my first round of questioning, but I hope that you were. $28 million for essentially 4 employees. How many of these 635 companies have 2 employees or less? Can you tell Canadians, please?
Actually, we're undertaking a horizontal audit, as I announced at lunch, and we will be able to provide that information. I will say that the individual at DND that is at the heart of your question was employed at DND after I left as minister. PSPC is also reviewing its supply arrangement, and I will ask Ms. Samantha Tattersall if she can comment further.
My final question, Minister, which I think is very important for Canadians. Previous to you, the Minister of Procurement and his Deputy Minister were here discussing the very important issue of conflict of interest. Now, your spouse, of course, is a director of Life Labs who received a $66.3 million contract on June 23rd in 2020, as well as a $1.9 million contract on August 20th of the same year. The Deputy Minister of Procurement said that 5 employees were fired, were released for not indicating their conflict of interest. Yet apparently you did not indicate a conflict of interest to the Ethics Commissioner. Do you believe that you should be held to the same standard as these 5 employees who were fired?
Wow, good question.
I apologize. We are out of time. However, next up is Mr. Jouari. I'm sure he will allow time to answer that if he chooses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, welcome. Minister, can you explain to the committee what services fall under the professional and special services categories?
And respond to the honourable member's false allegations that she is touting on social media and in committee. I have complied with the conflict of interest guidelines. I have ensured that I've complied in terms of disclosure and screens, and I would caution the honourable member against making false allegations before she has the actual facts. And if she would like to make a further inquiry with the Conflict of Interest Commissioner, I invite her to do so. They have confirmed that I have complied, and I signed no contracts, recused myself from every single meeting, and voluntarily recused myself from others in order to ensure that the screens remained in place. My Deputy Minister and Chief of Staff reinforced the screens and ensured that I was recused. I find it highly, highly questionable that a member of parliament would make false allegations against another member of parliament without checking her facts.
Thank you, Minister. I can assure you that the member that you talked about was actually standing in the back of the room and listening to you. But quickly going back along the same line, Minister, did you actually, because we're now focusing on the comment that Ms. Kuzi made, she's also made the allegation, at least that's the way I processed it, that you're responsible for signing all these checks that the government is spending. Have you signed any as a minister on responsible for many portfolio? Have you signed any checks that has anything to do with ArriveCan or any other application or projects?
Again, I have not. I was not involved in any way relating to the ArriveCan contracts. Those contracts did not come to me as minister. And once again, I find it highly questionable that members of the opposition would be making allegations without actually checking the facts. We are in an age of misinformation and disinformation, and it is incumbent upon us from a legal and a moral standpoint to ensure that before we make allegations, we actually have the facts at our fingertips. And once again, I'm glad you've asked that question. I did not sign any of those contracts. I did comply with the conflict of interest screens and disclosure obligations, and I will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. But I don't think to the Canadian that should be any surprise. I think the leader of opposition gets up during the question period every day and makes false allegation and mislead Canadians across many aspects. So this is not something that we are not new to sitting in this committee, because we see it on a daily basis in the House of Commons in front of many Canadians. I only got about 30 seconds. Can you talk about the main estimate that you just recently published? How much have the voted on expenditure change in this year main estimates?
I'm afraid you only have about 15 seconds.
That's all I need. Voted on expenditures are down 6.6 billion or 3.3% from the 2023-2024 main estimates. Thank you.
Thanks. Mrs. Vignola for 2 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Minister, I'd like to come back to the official languages. Currently, under several contracts, use of English is required. And some point out that the people who are hired may need to use or may be required to use French. My question is simple. Why is it not obligatory in both cases? Why is French never obligatory? And that English is going to be possibly needed. Why isn't it? Why is one optional and the other isn't? Well, that's a very important question, because today is Francophonie Day, so I'd like to wish you a good Francophonie Day, Chair. And I'd like to say that departments must ensure that they are complying with the Official Languages Act. It is an obligation on their part. And I take that obligation very seriously. I want to continue working on Part 7 of that Act. And I can expand on that if you like. Thank you. A few weeks ago, an individual was hired at the Coast Guard, and they were responsible for files involved with Quebec. It was a unilingual Anglophone who was hired. And on the St. Lawrence River, now it is becoming more and more difficult for people working with the Coast Guard and with pilots to be able to work in French. They receive their orders in English. When this is the St. Lawrence River, and we're talking about the safety of users on that river and of the public. So can you ensure that from now on, senior civil servants, regardless of the department they work with, will be bilingual, and that bilingualism doesn't just apply to francophones?
In order to get you out at a decent time, Minister, we have to follow our timelines. We are past. Perhaps you can respond in writing to Mrs. Vignola. Mr. Disley for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll now turn to a troubling concern of reports of significant cuts to Indigenous Services Canada and Crown Indigenous Relations at the approximate amount of $417 million. And the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs said just recently, quote, "It's simply unacceptable and irresponsible for the ministers to cut funding when First Nations are already in a constant state of emergency." It's clear that some of this, of course, stems from lawsuits that the government has lost. It's troubling in some ways, considering that this is a matter of both legality and morality, something you just cited, Madam Minister, as important aspects of how we govern our country. It's important that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit also receive the same level of respect and dignity that their services that they rely on also enjoy. Can you please tell us in this committee, where will the $417 million be cut?
I want to confirm that, as described in their departmental plans, both Indigenous Services Canada and CERNA will have reallocations from internal services and operational efficiencies, travel efficiencies, and streamlining professional services towards resolving claims and agreements, not in terms of services as described in your question. And furthermore, we took a special view of both ISC and CERNA during that process to allow both ministries time to engage in consultation as required under Truth and Reconciliation. We take that very seriously, and so there was a carve-out for both of those ministries in order for them
Sorry,
to
Minister, just one more question. In relation to the Jordan's Principle, which is the largest concern that many have, including the Indian Residential School Survivors Fund, these two funds in particular have been quoted as seeing a reduction in spending. This is a concern I think First Nations, Métis, and Inuit have across the country. Could you please provide in writing to this committee information, detailed information as to the cuts to programs, services, and grants, please?
Thanks very much. Wonderful. Thanks.
Jordan's
Mr. Genuis, please, for 4.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be doing a bit of splitting over here. Minister, you were the Public Services and Procurement Minister when this whole Arrive scam journey started. Can you help us with this key question? Who made the decision to choose GC Strategies?
That decision did not occur at Treasury Board, and from reading the Auditor General report, I understand that it came at CBSA.
Okay, Minister, you were the Minister of PSBC at the time. Did you have any eyes on who made that decision? The problem we have with this issue is that there's this grave corruption scandal, and yet everybody's saying that somebody else is responsible and nobody's taking responsibility. Can you help us shed any light on that?
I can answer the question truthfully, and I did not have eyes on any of the matters relating to the application or that supplier. My mandate during the pandemic was procuring vaccines. We were the most vaccinated country in the world by July 2021.
Thanks, Minister. That's not the question, but thank you for your response. As we try to get to the bottom of what happened, Minister, do you think there is a role, or should be a role, or has been a role of ministerial decision-making in setting any guidelines that would prevent what happened with the Arrive scam scandal? We continuously hear that ministers have nothing to do with these decisions. That's the line we hear from you, from other ministers. But it leaves me wondering what ministers are doing here other than kind of receiving briefings about process.
The role of Treasury Board is to ensure that we have guidelines in place and rules in place, like the Directive on Conflict of Interest and like the announcement I made today to increase
Sorry, but Minister,
the
rules
oversight
weren't
via
followed.
the
rules weren't followed, and then your
professional
department did
services
nothing.
guide.
So I'm going to now hand the time over to Mr. Brock.
I have one question, Minister. Two middlemen companies, Government of Canada Strategies and Dalian combined, received $27 million in taxpayer dollars on the ArriveScan app. The combined ownership of both companies is 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Two companies. Do you agree with a majority of Canadians that there is a serious problem in this country with government contracting?
I agree with the Auditor General's report that stated there was a serious problem with the contracting undertaken by CBSA for this application, and we are prepared to follow the recommendations of the RCMP when they are forthcoming. And in advance of that, I have made an announcement to make sure that we are increasing the oversight under our guide for managers and professional services.
To my colleague, Ms. Kuzi.
Thank you.
As Receiver General for Canada, the Minister of Public Services and Procurement is responsible for overseeing all the funds coming in and going out of government accounts. What is at the bottom of every single check that comes out from the Government of Canada? The signature of the Receiver General for Canada, the Minister of Procurement. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Souza, you've got like 13 seconds before we have to dismiss the minister.
So do you want
4
me to,
minutes, sir.
you want me to proceed? Okay, I'm going to share I'd like to share 2 minutes of my time with the Vice Chair, Mr. Majid Jawari. Minister, thank you for being here, and I appreciate you and your team and the extended and the amount of work that you do in clamping down on fraud and enhancing accountability. And I know that some members opposite have been going on about the double dippers. Of course, one of them was a card-carrying Conservative member of Canada. And he was out there doing what he's doing. We recognize that major cuts is part of the problem as we proceeded forward. Members of this very committee voted against funding of the Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying.
Point of order.
I'll pause your time, Mr. Souza.
Mr. Souza is deliberately spreading misinformation with the evidence that was heard yesterday.
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Souza, continue.
Misinformation is something that they know all too well, Mr. Chair. And furthermore, they voted against the Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying and the Office of the Information of Privacy Commissioners. And funding of these officers of Parliament is extremely important. They hold the government to account and ensure trust of our institutions. Certainly the Office of the Office of the Auditor General is a prime example. So, Minister, the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, when he was minister responsible for safeguarding our democracy, he did not ensure that these officers of Parliament were actually funded adequately. Can you explain to this committee your thoughts on how we ensure adequate funding for these institutions, and what are the next steps that are being taken to take accountability measures and adherence to the issues at hand?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there's a lot going on in the room. I didn't quite catch the question. If I could ask the member to restate the question, thank you.
I would. I'll repeat the question, Minister. You're doing extensive work. You're taking initiatives going forward, recognizing some of the shortcomings that have occurred, recognizing some of the shortcomings from the previous government as well. What are the steps that are being taken? Can you reaffirm the announcement that you made today?
Well, I thank you for that question. The first thing we're doing is we're taking a comprehensive look across government. Many departments will be examined by the Comptroller General. We will be doing a horizontal audit, and from there we will also be enhancing the Manager's Guide on Professional Services, and we will be looking at the Directive on Conflict of Interest. The actual new guide on managers and professional services is being issued today, so we are taking proactive steps after the Auditor General's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this question directly goes to the clerk of the committee. As we are talking about the ArriveCan, I would like to get confirmation from the clerk of the committee whether all the documents that Mr. Christopher, which is the CEO, sorry, thank you, for GC strategy, has he provided all the document that he was supposed to provide to the committee, to you?
You can't ask questions of the clerk. You can ask me to ask the clerk.
Okay,
But my
Chair,
understanding
thank you.
is Mr. Firth has set forth 2 sets of answers, but did not answer everything completely that was asked of him.
Okay, is clerk in that position as well?
You can go ahead and respond, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as you stated, sir, the committee has received 2 correspondences from Mr. Firth, the last being distributed to members on Monday morning. I believe that correspondence that was circulated in both official languages stated remaining answers. Therefore, at this point, I don't expect anything further from Mr. Firth, but I would leave it to the committee to assess whether or not the questions have all been addressed in those responses. I would not ascertain to make the analysis myself.
Is there something specific you were looking for, or?
We know there was a number of, as it relates to ArriveCan, there were a number of questions that was raised, and I just wanted to make sure that all those questions were responded in those 2 responded. I do realize one went beyond the 9 a.m.
Yeah, it's a yes and no. Like, if we didn't get everything in time, the stuff that we asked, please respond in writing to, yes, but which is different than answering all the questions asked of him of the meeting. So it's 2-pronged. So questions were asked of the meeting that he refused to respond to. Questions were also asked, could you provide these items in writing? And it appears those ones were responded to.
So all the items that he was requested to provide in writing, he has.
From what I can tell, and I think from what, I don't want to speak for you, but what I think, what the clerk
just
can
want
tell,
to make sure the clerk.
Yeah, we're not, I don't think we're looking for anything else from what we asked for written responses.
Can the clerk kindly?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say that based on analysis done alongside the analyst, it appeared that the majority, perhaps all of the takeaways or the questions that were asked of the witness to provide responses to in writing were addressed. Again, I would hesitate to give you 100% clarity on that. That said, as the chair acknowledged, there were questions directed to Mr. Firth by the chair on behalf of the committee, and those questions, based on an analysis of the information, don't seem to be part of that series of answers provided. But again, I leave it to the committee and to the chair to assess whether or not they are satisfied with the responses.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else for the minister? Minister, thank you for joining us. Officials, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you at OGGO. If there's nothing else, we will dismiss. Thanks for sticking around for the extra 4 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you personally for chairing many meetings that I've appeared at over the years, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.